Tucker Carlson's got some stuff to say. Let's hear him out.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. It was just last week that we noticed that parts of the transgender movement seem to be getting militant and possibly dangerous. We did a whole segment about it on Thursday night. That segment was sparred by an NPR segment we had heard and never expected to hear. NPR has always, as a matter of editorial policy, completely opposed the civilian ownership of firearms, with the possible exception of maybe IRS agents.
I don't even think that's true, by the way. I think that while NPR is pretty, lib left and they've been in favor of gun control, I've never heard. I mean, to be fair, I have not listened to reams and reams of NPR, but I've listened to enough NPR to get a pretty good sense of what they stand for. And I'm pretty sure that while they might advocate for some forms of gun control, I've never heard them say that people should not be allowed to own guns. I've never heard them say that all guns should be confiscated. I've never heard them say that, no one should be allowed to own one. So I feel like that's pretty intense hyperbole coming from Tucker right now. Now, if someone has some information that I'm unaware of, I'm more than happy to admit that there is a possibility that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe maybe NPR does take that editorial stance, but I'm pretty sure they do not. And by the way, finding any one commentator that might have said something is not enough. You need to show me evidence that is not just the contention of a commentator on NPR, but of NPR itself, that guns should just be banned. Pretty sure that's not it. I don't know how many people who are in my chat right now might be NPR listeners, but if any of you guys are, I'm pretty sure you know that that's not NPR's stance.
Yet here suddenly was that very same station, National Public Radio, positively urging trans people to buy guns, as many guns as possible, and if necessary, to use them. The world is dangerous, explained one trans gun owner. You have to be dangerous back.
How is this now such a problematic position? Because this has been the right-wing justification and pretext for owning guns forever. Why do right-wingers own guns? I'm pretty sure right-wingers own guns because they have them for protection in case pops off. I don't understand. So if a cis white dude is like, I need guns to protect myself and my family, then it's like, well, that's understandable. But if a trans person's like, I need guns to protect myself and my family, all of a sudden Tucker Carlson's like, wait a minute now, what the hell's going on here? Right? Also, I severely doubt, once again, that NPR explicitly said that, trans people need to own guns. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they did a piece on trans gun ownership, but I seriously doubt that the message of that piece was that every trans person should get as many guns as possible, because that would be extremely weird. It would be extremely weird for NPR to take an editorial stance that strong on anything. Have you ever listened to NPR before? It's not known for its incendiary rhetoric, okay?
And that seems strange to us. Is the United States really a dangerous place for trans people? Well,
I love how this guy has no trouble buying into the notion that the United States is a dangerous place for white men, but is incensed and perplexed by the idea that it could be dangerous for trans people.
West Baltimore is dangerous. You could easily get murdered there. But
you could easily get murdered anywhere. Anywhere there are humans, you could get murdered. I understand there's places where it's statistically more likely than others, but hey, it's possible anywhere there's people. Remember, even in the Bible, when there was only 4 people on the earth, one of them murdered another. So
if you're trans in this country, obviously there are many downsides, but there do appear to be some benefits. It's a lot easier to get into Harvard, for example. It's definitely easier to get a job at Citibank or in the Biden White House.
Is that my mistake? Is that why I never went to Harvard? Should have been trans.
If you're transgender and can so much as fly a kite, the Pentagon will happily make you an F-35 pilot. Is
that true? That's the only thing. I want to be an F-35 pilot. No, you're not qualified. All you know how to do is fly kites. Yes, but I am trans. Oh, well then right this way. It's another one of these things where people start making shit up to get mad at.
So Hollywood can make a movie about it. Identifying as trans, whatever, again, its downsides, does convey status in this country, which is why so many young people now...
I mean, it might convey status to some people, but I think that for every person it conveys status to, there's probably something like 3 people who are like incensed and enraged by it. And then there are probably 10 people who don't give a right? Because if you really, I think if you, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there are polls on this, and maybe I should go look at them instead of just guessing, but I'm just going to guess based on my own like sense of the vibes of the country that the vast majority of people really don't give a about trans people one way or the other. And then there are right-wingers who absolutely seethingly hate trans people. And then there are some on the left who even hate trans people. And then there are some left-wingers and other compassionate people who like and care about trans people. But the vast majority of people don't care one way or the other. Trans people get their acceptance completely and utterly. The majority of the country be like, oh, yeah, cool, whatever. Yeah, good. Nice, good for them. Trans people are marching to camps. Oh, man, it sucks, bro. That's it. That's the majority of this country, in my estimation.
Not a lot of 19-year-olds are pretending to be car mechanics or linemen for a regional power company in eastern Ohio, but plenty of college freshmen do pretend to be members of the opposite sex. And why wouldn't they? The people in...
Oh, yeah, trans for all those sweet, sweet benefits. The trans benefit package. This is a pretty old take, by the way. You used to see it attributed more to being gay. You know, I remember there was a right-wing dude I used to know that used to make the joke, you know, that only a small percentage of gay people are born gay. The rest of them are sucked into it. Get it? Sucked into it, right? And so this attitude has been around for a hot minute, but now you see it more for trans people than you do for gay people. The idea that someone is going to go through transitioning just because of all the amazing perks that it bestows upon you, right? You know what I mean? Because it's so awesome being trans that, you know, obviously people are faking it left and right. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's not how it goes. Trans people in my audience, is that how it goes? You let me know.
In charge despise working class whites, but they venerate the trans community.
Despise working class whites, but love the trans community. I mean, like, no, not really. I feel like no one despises working class whites. People despise conservatives because they're hateful and stupid. And a lot of them happen to be working class whites. But if a working class white person is a reasonable, nice, compassionate, loving person, I don't have a problem with that. They're fine in my eyes. I don't judge anyone for being a working class white person. I judge someone for being a hate-mongering bigot piece of shit.
People are just responding to incentives. It's rational in a way. But that does not explain the anger that we heard in that NPR segment. Why are some trans people so...
Can we hear this segment? Do I have to go watch this segment to know the context of this? Or can I just safely assume that Tucker is misrepresenting it? I'm pretty sure I can just safely assume Tucker is misrepresenting it, right?
So angry, and why do they seem to be mad specifically at traditional Christians? We can't think of any trans person who's ever been murdered by a pastor.
Really? Really? You can't? I'm pretty sure that the majority of trans people who've ever been murdered have at least been murdered de facto by a pastor somewhere along the lines. I'm pretty sure that a lot of trans people who've been murdered have probably been murdered by you somewhere along those lines. Because if someone is conditioned to hate a person by rhetoric that is constantly, you know, fomenting hatred against them, you know, then everybody who participates in that hatred is, you know, bears some responsibility for that death. So, you know, I know that, you know, you can't necessarily be charged with that because there has to be the freedom to state your opinions. I think that freedom to your own opinions is an inherently good idea. Freedom to lie, I think, is an inherently bad idea. So I'm never going to back down from that position, by the way. I'm never going to back down from my quote unquote ministry of truth position that, yeah, no opinion should be censored, but lies should be. But, you know, just because you can't be held criminally liable for spewing hatred against a group of people and then that group of people experiencing a higher rate of murder than other groups of people, just because you can't be criminally charged with that doesn't mean that you're not somewhat responsible. And so, yeah, I don't know if there's been a case in American history where someone who is a pastor has gone and murdered a trans person, but there have been plenty of cases where a pastor has preached vileness against trans people, and then that has reached the ears of some unstable person that does go and murder a trans person.
As far as we know, that has never happened. So it's not an actual threat of violence from Christians that's inspiring some trans people to buy AR-15s. No, it's got to be more fundamental than that, and it is. The trans movement is the mirror image of Christianity, and therefore its natural enemy.
So this would be an example of the line of rhetoric that gets trans people killed, right? So you go to your audience, predominantly of Christians, and you tell them that the natural enemy of the Christian is the trans person. So what does that do for trans people? Does that make their lives easier, or does that make their lives harder? Of course it makes their lives harder. And for some Christians, they're going to take it way further than just making their lives hard. They're going to say like, hey, this, and you have on your screen right now, you have transgender killer targets Christian school. And then as you have this image of transgender killer targets Christian school on the screen, you say transgender people are the natural, transgenderism or whatever you said is the natural enemy of Christianity. And so don't you think you're kind of sending a message like, oh yeah, it's time for some reprisals then? If these trans people are going to kill us, maybe it's time we kill them. Don't you think that's kind of implied when you say something like that with this image on the screen? I mean, maybe that's not your intent. I'll be characteristically more charitable than I actually feel and say maybe that's not your intent. But even if it's not your intent, don't you think that someone could take it that way? Don't you think maybe you shouldn't put that out there in the zeitgeist? I don't know.
In Christianity, the price of admission is admitting that you're not God. Christians openly concede that they have no real power over anything, and for that matter, very little personal virtue. They will tell you to your face that they are sinful and helpless and basically absurd. They're not embarrassed about any of this. They brag about it. That saved a wretch like me, goes the most famous Christian hymn ever written in English. The trans movement takes the opposite view.
It's on the level of popular atheist threats to beat me up, yes.
Trans ideology claims dominion over nature.
Lol, TJ became a literal liberal stereotype. Ha ha ha. I'm not even a liberal, bro. You guys, you need to... I'm sorry. If you want to call me a leftist, if you want to say I'm a leftist stereotype, I'll accept that. You want to call me a liberal stereotype? You're wrong about that. You don't even know what a liberal is, bro. Shoosh.
Itself. We can change the identity we were born with, they will tell you with wild-eyed certainty. Christians can never agree with this statement because these are powers they believe God alone possesses.
All right, well, that's fine. If you want to believe that God alone possesses those powers, first of all, not all Christians believe the same thing. Second of all, if you want to believe God alone possesses those powers, that's fine. That's your belief. You can have that belief, but your belief doesn't get to take precedence over other people's beliefs. You're supposed to live in a country where all beliefs are treated pretty much equally. Tucker Carlson is what TJ calls a member of the exploiter class. Yeah, this rhetoric leads to trans people dying or being oppressed, but at least Economos is pleased. Yeah, I mean, he is an exploiter. He is a user. He is a fomenter. That's what he is.
That unwillingness to agree, that failure to acknowledge a trans person's dominion over nature, incites and enrages some in the trans community.
No. Like, okay, I don't know what's so hard about this. Here's the idea, guys. You guys can have your own beliefs, but at the end of the day, you respect others and their beliefs. And in turn, your beliefs get the respect they deserve as well, which is that we all respect the right of other people's beliefs to exist. That's it. You can think their beliefs are stupid. They can think your beliefs are stupid. But what you don't do is foment the idea that, like, we are natural enemies and they are at war against us and they hate our values and they will stop at nothing to destroy us. So, of course, it's only rational that we are, and our hands have been forced. It's only rational that we must destroy them first. We didn't want to do it, but we have no choice.
People who believe they're God can't stand to be reminded that they're not. So Christianity and transgender orthodoxy are wholly incompatible theologies.
Not really. I mean, there's plenty of trans people who are Christian. There's Christian trans people. They manage to make it work. It's because they're not wholly incompatible theologies. I mean, one's not even a theology to begin with, but like, let's just for the sake of argument say it was. They wouldn't be incompatible theologies, quote unquote.
They can never be reconciled. They are on a collision course with each other. One side is likely to draw blood before the other side. That's what we concluded last week.
If you think that the first blood in this conflict between trans people and Christians was what happened last week, then you're an idiot. Like, trans people have been murdered at a higher rate for a while now. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of that has to do with Christian orthodoxy. So I'm pretty sure that, you know, if there was first blood drawn here, I'm pretty sure it was drawn by Christians. But I don't even want to support the narrative of trans versus Christian, because there's no reason trans people should hate Christians, and there's no reason Christians should hate trans people. Like, first of all, as you said, Christianity is supposed to teach that we're all sinners, right? So none of us measure up in the eyes of God. So you're not supposed to be going there casting judgment and aspersions at the trans people just because their understanding of God or their understanding of the world is different than yours. Second of all, trans people do not believe, there's nothing about being trans that leads you to deny God. There's nothing about that. Like, you can be trans and be an atheist, you can be trans and be a Christian, you can be trans and be a Jew, you can be trans and be a Muslim. There's plenty of things you can be trans and still believe in certain religious doctrines. Now, personally, I don't think anyone should believe these religious doctrines because I think they're all stupid and backwards and lead to terrible outcomes. But if you want to believe them, I'm not going to necessarily stop you. I might stop you from propagating them because a lot of lies are required to transmit religious doctrine from one mind to another. A lot of coercion and exploitation as well.
Yesterday morning,
but I mean, ultimately, your beliefs are your own.
Tragically, our fears were confirmed. A self-identified trans person called Audrey Hale committed mass murder at a Christian school in Nashville. Hale burst into a place called the Convent School and executed 3 9-year-olds as well as 3 adults. Police have released body cam footage from the end of the massacre. We're showing you just a small part of it. You can see the rest online if you want. We're not going to show it because that's too awful and sad. But what was almost as sickening to see in a far more subtle and insidious way was the media coverage of yesterday's tragedy. Here's Terry Moran of ABC News, for example, suggesting that Christians were murdered in Tennessee because they infringed on the rights of transgendered people. Why?
They did. Christians in Tennessee did infringe on the rights of transgender people. Now, is that justification for this attack? Obviously, it's not. But could it explain it? I think in part it could. I mean, like, looking into the motives of a killer shouldn't be controversial. You know, like, if a black man pre-civil rights era killed a bunch of white people in the Deep South because they make him, and they left a manifesto like, they made me drink at a separate fountain, and I wasn't allowed to ride the front of the bus and all this stuff, and I just got sick of it, and I decided to take out my oppressors. Would that justify that black man wantonly slaughtering a bunch of random white people? No. But would his motive make perfect sense? Yeah. Yeah, it would. And pointing out that, you know, there is a motive there, that maybe society contributed to the creation of that motive in some way, that shouldn't be controversial. That should be a facts, don't care about your feelings kind of moment, right?
Watch.
Audrey Hale identified herself as a transgender person. State of Tennessee earlier this month passed and the governor signed a bill that banned.
Did him being trans have anything to do with the attack? Did he have a manifesto or something? We don't know. I mean, we know there is a manifesto. So when it comes to this attack, we know that a manifesto exists. But for some reason, Audrey Hale did not release this manifesto. they had a copy of the manifesto at their house, and I guess that they expected the police to release it for them. That's not how it goes. If you want your manifesto to be read, you got to put that shit on 4chan or something before you do the attack. That's how you get it. But, you know, if you're not going to do that, then yeah, no one's going to read it. Maybe eventually they'll leak the manifesto to it, or they'll leak us snippets of it. But as of now, we haven't had a whiff of this manifesto. We don't know what the hell the motive was. We don't know why the hell they did this. So pretty much what Tucker is doing is the same thing I'm doing, which is just speculating about something we have no idea about, because that's the most we could do in lieu of any sort of actual, you know, evidence. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe some of that manifesto will make its way into the public sphere. Maybe all of it will. And then we can read and judge for ourselves what the hell was going on with this person.
Transgender medical care for minors, as well as a law that prohibited adult entertainment, including male and female impersonators, after a series of drag show controversies in that state.
Yeah. I don't think that guy... That really didn't strike me as that other guy being like, man, I guess these Christians had it coming for doing all that anti-drag show shit, huh? Like, he's explaining the political context that this event happened under. That shouldn't be controversial. That shouldn't be offensive to you, like, at all.
The state of Tennessee bans the sexual mutilation of children. Children get shot to death in a school. It's cause and effect. That's what ABC News is.
No, no one said any of that, you goddamn weird little man, dude. Come on. You know that's not what was said. You're such a weirdo. You're such an exploitative.
Telling you. That's not far from justifying mass murder. But others took the next step. A group called the Trans Resistance Network said that the shooter's death was a complex tragedy that resulted from, quote, anti-trans bias. The Hershey chocolate...
I mean, we don't know. Like, at this point, we just don't know enough to know. The facts that we are aware of, we can form narratives with. But we really don't have that many facts. If we were to know the contents of this person's manifesto, or this person, some people are saying now that it's not a manifesto, but just a diary. If we knew a little bit more about why this person did it, if they had some stated motives, if it's obvious that they had some sort of like deeper psychological underpinnings to their motives, then we could speculate what caused this, and we could have arguments about it. But in lieu of any of that, I think it's just premature to make any sort of like statement one way or the other.
Chocolate company's new trans spokesman, meanwhile, someone called Faye Johnstone, posted messages after the shooting.
Why is this dude always freaking out about chocolate? I never understand why. Like, he got super butthurt when the green M&M changed her boots. And now he's super upset that Hershey's dare have a trans woman in their Canadian ad campaign. Like, why is that always... Why is there always some kind of weird with right-wingers and candy?
Complaining about, quote, trans misogyny. In Canada, a taxpayer-funded trans rights organization put out a statement that ignored the murder of the children in Nashville entirely and instead claimed that there has been a, quote, exponential rise in anti-trans violence.
Well, has there been? Because those are not mutually exclusive. Like, you can still, like, a trans person shooting up a school and there being an exponential rise in violence against trans people, those could both be happening at the same time. Not one does not discount the other in any way, shape, or form. So I don't know what the point of that line of rhetoric is supposed to be.
That is a lie. It's a provable lie. And in fact, the
All right, prove it wrong then.
opposite is true. We seem to be watching the rise of trans terrorism. The man who tried to murder...
So no actual stats then? I mean, look, when I'm doing this, I'm just reacting. I'm just watching something I've never seen before and reacting to it off the fly and off the cuff. And I always try to like put that forward to people to do their own research, and that sometimes I might say wrong. But you are a broadcast journalist on the news with, I'm assuming like a research team, right? So you should be able to, to do fact checks, and you should be able to quickly sling statistics at me and tell me their source and all that stuff. So, but instead of doing that, you're just like, nope, not true. Not true. What is true is it seems to be a rise of trans people attacking us. What? And also, I think the term trans terrorism, pretty bold term for a crime, once again, that we don't even know the motive for.
Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, after the repeal of Roe v. Wade, identified as a, quote, trans gamer girl. The man who shot up a nightclub in Colorado in this past November and murdered 5 people identified as non-binary. And now this. And
they're still using that guy that was 100% lying about being non-binary. Like, I guess that's all you have to do. You can be a crazy right-winger, and there can be a mountain of evidence that you hate gay people. But all you have to do is, after you shoot a bunch of gay people, just say, like, I'm non-binary. And they're like, oh, see, look, non-binary killer. It's like, wait, what? Are we sure they're not doing a psyop? Are we sure they're not lying? All the evidence seems to say they are. Nope, we're just going to run with it. We're going to run with the killer's narrative, even though that's stupid.
Could be more. Antifa has announced this coming Saturday is the, quote, Trans Day of Vengeance. Vengeance for what? That's not explained. But the suggestion is there will be violence in Washington this weekend.
There wasn't.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted about this today.
All right. That's enough Tucker, I think.